Hello, I'm John. Welcome back. I've got quite a few books to share with you today. I've finished over the past couple of weeks. Probably more than that, probably about 3 weeks, somewhere in there, because I didn't I didn't talk about these in my last wrap-up video, which was about Veil and Bring Out Your Dead. I'm not really sure why. I think I planned to do 2 videos, and I only did one. And it's because I don't feel like I'm very good at this, to be frank. I don't feel like I'm very good at talking about the books I've read. I feel like I either go on too long or not long enough. I give too much detail, not enough detail, etc. So I'm a little bit wary of doing actual videos on books. As you know, as bad as that sounds, I it seems like I talk for a really long time. I have really long videos, like I'm doing right now. So I'm just going to get to it. So the first book I read was McGarr on the Cliffs of Moher by Bartholomew Gill. And this was okay. It's about a police superintendent in Ireland. So a woman is found dead right next to the cliff, and McGarr is there. There's a man who is supposedly drunk who found the corpse, and she has been stabbed to death with a pitchfork. And this is farm country, so it's the 70s, by the way. I forgot to mention that. This book was written in the 70s. And she has a lot of money on her person, and she's recognized eventually as being the daughter of a couple that lives down the road, and she thought it sucked to live in the Irish countryside, so she moved to New York City and became a journalist, and she has come back to Ireland to do a story on the IRA, and there's quite a bit more to it than that. I had mixed feelings about this book. I read it pretty quickly, and it was enjoyable, but I felt like some of the most interesting aspects of it were kind of glossed over, and there were parts of it I didn't understand, like why McGarr is on the complete opposite coast and why all of his police buddies are there. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, because it's something like a 4.5 hour drive, 4 hour drive, probably longer in the 70s. And yeah, I at one point he goes to New York, and ultimately I felt like the ending of this book was just unsatisfying. So it wasn't my favorite read, but I mean, it was okay. And the next book I liked quite a bit better. It was Aliens versus Predators Prey, or Aliens versus Predator Prey by Steve Perry and Stephani Perry. And they are father and daughter, and she would go by S.D. Perry in her later novels. She's written my favorite Alien and my favorite Aliens and my favorite Resident Evil novels. She wrote the only Resident Evil novel that was not based on a video game or a movie, as far as I know, Caliban Cove. It was really good. I liked it. And so this takes place on a planet far off, way off distant in the galaxy. And it is a planet that has been bought and inhabited by a company, a Japanese company, that has them raise these alien creatures that they raise like cattle and slaughter and send the meat back to Earth. And we first come to the story with a ship that is going to this planet to harvest these creatures. And they are passed on the way there by something incredibly fast, and they don't know what it is. And it turns out that it's full of predators. I'm not sure what their species is called. I don't think we ever get told what their species is called. And they are on a hunt. It's a teacher and some other elders, and they are taking their young to go to this planet to hunt. And when they hunt xenomorphs. So they seed the planet with eggs, and then they go and they hunt the xenomorphs. And they don't know the people are there. The people don't know they're coming. And the main predator is called Deshande. That's as close as we can get to pronouncing his name, Deshande. And he is pretty old. He's called Broken Tusk. You know, they have these things that stick out. They're tusks, and his was broken off in a fight. He's the only predator to ever win a fight with a xenomorph without a weapon, just with his bare hands. And so he's pretty well regarded. But his students, one of his students in particular, is challenging him and is bucking tradition, and that gives him a lot of trouble. And on the other end, we have a new overseer that's come to the planet. She's only been there for 6 months, and her predecessor is about to leave on this ship that's coming. And the people there don't really like her because they think of her as an ice queen. She doesn't get out much. She doesn't really talk to the people. She seems very, very focused on just doing her job. But there are reasons for that. I didn't mention that these are all based on graphic novels, by the way. Dark Horse graphic novels. And so they're already kind of set against her, especially some of the bigger, well, I can't call them cattle barons exactly, but basically that's what they are. So when one of these ranchers is brought the dead face huggers by one of his employees, he's afraid that whatever this thing is, he has no idea what it is. They don't know. They're afraid that the planet will be quarantined and they won't be able to sell their meat, and so they'll lose all kinds of money. That's his only concern. So he plants them somewhere far away, or he has his employee turn them in and tell the vet there that she found them far away from where the herds are kept, so they won't quarantine the planet. And of course that means that the facehuggers got out and they impregnated these creatures. And so the ship comes down, both ships come down, and the vet goes out to this canyon to find where these weird creatures came from. He's really intrigued by these weird creatures. And there are the predators. They just come out of their ship, and they come after him. He panics and rams his, like a hover bike into their ship, and it blows up. So they're stranded, and Deshande is gravely injured, and the other elders are killed, and the rebel among the group takes over the other predators, and they go to kill the humans because they're young, they think they know everything, and they think they can do whatever. And at the same time, the ship comes down from Earth, and they put these infected, whatever they are, they're kind of described as being rhinos, but bigger and dumber than cattle. And so in the hold of the ship, while the crew comes out to party and have a good time, the aliens are breeding. And so the predators come in and start killing the people, and then the aliens come in and start killing the people and the predators. And it's this big battle. And in the middle of it, some people had been sent out to find the vet who was killed. And they find Deshande, who is gravely, gravely injured, but he's a predator and he's regaining his strength and everything very quickly. And they take him back to the human settlement because they're like, look at this alien. We found an alien, you know? And one thing leads to another. And the new overseer, Noguchi, her name is Machiko Noguchi, she rescues Deshande, and they team up to fight the aliens. And in the middle of all this, she becomes his greatest student. It was just really good. I mean, I think it's the best aliens novel that I've read yet. I've read a few, and a lot of them get kind of repetitive, and they focus on the same plot with Weyland-Yutani and mad scientists and everything like this. But this is just different. This was just good, and you see it through the human perspective, and you see it through the predator's perspective, and it's just kind of interesting how their cultures are so different, but they can still kind of understand each other in a way in that. And I like the ending too. I won't spoil it. I just thought that was pretty good. And so that leads us to our next book, which is The High Window by Raymond Chandler. So this is let me see, I think this was a Philip Marlowe book. It's been a little while since I've read this. Okay, yeah, it's a Marlowe book. This is the first Raymond Chandler book I've ever read, and it's hard-boiled, and hard-boiled fiction and I don't always get along. You know, it's the kind of thing where like the detective will walk up on the street and say, "Hey, have you got the time?" And the person he's asking will be like, "You're the son of 1,000 fathers, all bastards like you." And you're just like, what? Everybody's rude to everybody in these books. If you know what quote that's from, I hope you know what quote or what movie that quote is from. One of my favorite characters in any movie says that. But anyway, it was okay. He's hired by a rich woman who sits around in the dark drinking port wine all day, and a valuable coin has gone missing. She's not allowed to sell it. Her husband died a couple of years before this, and in his will it stipulated that she couldn't sell any of his coins for, I can't remember, her entire life or something like that. She couldn't move out of her house, and she couldn't sell her coins, his coins. And right from the start, just everyone that Marlowe encounters, he has this, like, everybody's rude to him, including the woman who hires him. And that's just so weird. I don't understand that. Was everybody rude to each other in 1942? And she has a son who's married a nightclub singer, and of course the nightclub singer is involved with some pretty shady characters all throughout Los Angeles. And there is a person who wants to buy the coin, and the plot gets really, really convoluted. And it was hard sometimes to understand what was going on. But it has really, really good writing. I mean, I was really impressed by Raymond Chandler's writing. And I read somewhere that if you're going to read Raymond Chandler, you should read him for the prose and not for the plot. And, I think that may be right. That's certainly how it seemed with this book. But I was going to read just a little bit of this just to give you an idea of Raymond Chandler's writing. Apparently I'm not doing a very good job today at remembering people's names. Okay. Veneer's olive skin turned the color of dried seaweed. He turned on his heel and rapped at me in a stifled voice, "Follow me." He went along the brick path under the tunnel of roses and through a white gate at the end. Beyond was a walled-in garden containing flower beds crammed with showy annuals, a badminton court, a nice stretch of greensward, and a small tiled pool glittering angrily in the sun. Beside the pool there was a flagged space set with blue and white garden furniture, low tables with composition tops, reclining chairs with footrests and enormous cushions, and overall a blue and white umbrella as big as a small tent. A long-lived, languorous type of showgirl blonde lay at her ease in one of the chairs, with her feet raised on a padded rest and a tall misted glass at her elbow, near a silver ice bucket and a Scotch bottle. She looked at us lazily as we came over the grass. From 30 feet away, she looked like a lot of class. From 10 feet away, she looked like something made up to be seen from 30 feet away. Her mouth was too wide. Her eyes were too blue. Her makeup was too vivid. The thin arch of her eyebrows was almost fantastic in its curve and spread, and the mascara was so thick on her eyelashes that they looked like miniature iron railings. She wore white duck slacks, blue and white open-toed sandals over bare feet, and crimson toenails, a white silk blouse and a necklace of green stones that were not square-cut emeralds. Her hair was as artificial as a nightclub lobby. On the chair beside her there was a white straw garden hat with a brim the size of a spare tire and a white satin chin strap. On the brim of the hat lay a pair of green sunglasses with lenses the size of donuts. So that's a lot of character description in a very short period of time. So you really get an idea of exactly what this place looked like and exactly what this lady he's dealing with looked like. And she's involved in some shady stuff too, of course. And anyway, it was really good for that. I enjoyed the prose a lot, but the story itself confused me, and I just was never all that on board with it. And yeah, so if you're going to read it for the prose. I would agree with that. But it was still good. I mean, I did enjoy it. I just don't understand the hard-boiled genre. I don't understand why everybody's rude and snippy and snappy. I just don't get it. Why would you hire a detective and then be rude to him right off the bat? I don't get that. So the next book I read was The Nightmare Chronicles by Douglas Clegg. This is 13 stories within one overarching storyline. And some people have kidnapped a young boy to hold him for ransom. It turns out he's not a boy, he's like a demon or something, and he starts giving them visions of all sorts of things. So Douglas Clegg writes in the same vein as Clive Barker, so there's a lot of sexual themes and pain and suffering and that kind of thing. And I thought most of these were really good. I had read one before called The Rendering Man, and that's a pretty messed up story. But, you know, I don't really want to go too deep into any of these stories because I think it would be better for you to read them yourself. But I'll read the little thing here on the back. 13 nightmares unfold. A young man searches for his dead wife among the crumbling buildings of Manhattan. I think that was my favorite one. So a guy has just moved into a new apartment with his wife. She's pregnant. She gets killed. And then he goes to a street in New York that they had gone to before, where there's a Chinese restaurant. And when he gets there, he finds that the Chinese restaurant has closed down after 50 years of being in business. And he sees his dead wife's face through the window, which is, you know, impossible. And so the rest of the story is of him trying to get into this, you know, abandoned restaurant, and he does. And I just really liked it. It kind of reminded me of Silent Hill or something like that after that point. Let's see. A journalist seeks the ultimate evil in a plague-ridden outpost of India. So that was really interesting. She goes down the river to this small village to find someone who is evil incarnate, basically. Skins people alive and that kind of thing. And she finds him. Okay, ancient rituals begin anew with the mystery of a teenage girl's disappearance. It reminds me of The Golden Bough by James Fraser, you know. And in a hospital for the criminally insane, there is only one doorway to salvation. That's a pretty messed up story. I enjoyed it. It's about a guy who killed his family and then claimed he was insane, but of course he wasn't. He just didn't want to go to a regular prison. So he gets sent to this mental hospital, and there is an old guy there who is apparently capable of getting him out. But, you know, things go really wrong, and I thought that was really good. And there were several more stories. I don't remember them by their names. The Little Mermaid was kind of interesting. Kind of, a lady hurts herself on the beach and she meets a crazy person who tries to turn her into a mermaid. And yeah, so I don't know. I just enjoyed that. I felt like reading some horror stories, and these were pretty horrifying. My one issue with it was that a lot of the stories seemed to build up and then just kind of end. And I felt like the most interesting bits were just kind of glossed over. He said in the intro to this that he never expected any of these to be published, that he was just writing them for himself. And maybe that's why. I really don't know. So the next book I read was John Shirley's Bioshock Rapture. I really liked this book. So if you've ever played the Bioshock games, the first two, this is the prequel to all of that. This is how Rapture was built by Andrew Ryan and, all the workers he employed. So the basic idea of it is that Andrew Ryan wants to get away from parasites, right? He wants to get away from taxes, from anybody who can tell him to do anything. Basically, it's Ayn Rand's Galt's Gulch retold in a city under the sea. Except with realistic people who have their flaws. They are not robots. They aren't, they're going to break the rules. They're going to have different desires and everything. And there is going to be, an upper class and a lower class in a place that is based on pure capitalism. It can't be any other way. And, I thought that was really, really well done. I mean, I read some reviews of this that said it was flat and boring. And I kind of get that if you're coming at it from the game. There's a lot of action and everything in the game. And this is really just the story of a utopian dream that met reality. You have scientists who have no moral boundaries, no ethical boundaries. So they are experimenting in the craziest ways. You have, like I said, people who came down to build Rapture who can't leave now, but they have no jobs. And so they've built a slum and they start to, desire Andrew Ryan to help them, to give them, just aid. They need to be fed. They need to be clothed. They need to be housed. And they don't have any jobs, and there are no jobs available for them. And Andrew Ryan goes to start calling them parasites. But he's the one who brought them there. He's the one who didn't plan for them, And it's kind of interesting. I mean, you see Andrew Ryan, and you get some of his backstory. His family was from Russia, and they were ran out of Russia when he was a child by the Bolsheviks, and some of his family were killed. And yeah, I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. And all the principal characters from the game are in this. And, in the games, the story of Rapture is told through audio diaries that you find throughout the game. And that's how this was told. I mean, there are some things that annoyed me about it, like sometimes a character would say a direct quote from the game. That was a little bit irritating. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story of Rapture. And you might too. I don't know. You probably have to have played the games to enjoy this. I'm not really sure. And the last book is A Red Death by Walter Mosley. I just finished this a couple of days ago. It took me a day and a half to read it. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's an Easy Rawlins mystery. Easy Rawlins from Devil in a Blue Dress. And this is the second book in the series. So it's a little bit complicated, but at the end of Devil in a Blue Dress, from what I understand, Easy had come away with some money that basically, I mean, it was stolen in a way, but there was nobody that it belonged to anymore, basically. That's what I understand. I haven't read the book yet, but that's kind of what he said in this. And he used that money to buy some rental houses, rental properties, apartment buildings, and his own house. It was $10,000. And I looked it up, the difference between 1948 and today. There's been, I think it said 1,200% inflation, so $10,000 in 1948, something like $123,000 in today's money. And so he's bought all these apartment buildings and everything, and he doesn't want anybody to know he has them. Not the government, not his friends, not the people who live in these buildings. And somehow an IRS agent finds out that he is the owner of these buildings, and he has got to pay taxes on them. And Easy doesn't take that well. He contemplates going in there and just shooting the guy, and when he does, there's another man in the office, or when he thinks about going in to shoot this guy, he goes to the office to shoot him, and it stops him because there's another man in the office, and he is an FBI agent, and he recruits him for a job of infiltrating a church and finding out what a man named, I think, Chaim Winsler is doing in this church. He's basically a communist, or a suspected communist. It's 1953, by the way, so it's right in the middle of all that, you know, the Red Scare, basically. And the FBI agent says, I'll erase all your troubles with the IRS if you do this job for me. And so he does. He gets involved in all this. People start winding up dead, and Easy has to figure out what's going on. It was a really good book. I mean, there were a lot of characters, and it was hard to keep track of who was who sometimes, but one of my favorite characters is Mouse. And Mouse is hard to explain. He's Easy's best friend, and he's a real good guy, but he is a really bad guy. Like, he goes from one extreme to the other in an instant, in a heartbeat. And he has no real moral conscience except for what suits him in the moment. So he will just shoot somebody and not feel bad about it. He might even shoot Easy. He's very dangerous, but he's also a really good friend. You know, he'll back you up. He can tell you jokes. He can tell you stories all night long. Mouse is a really interesting character. And to add to this story, Mouse's ex-wife shows up in Easy's house one day, and they start a relationship. That's not a spoiler. That's in the very beginning of the book. And Easy knows that he's being insane because Mouse will kill him. So he's skirting around this whole issue, the whole book. It was just good. I enjoyed it. And like I said, I want to read more of these. I'd like to read all of these Easy Rawlins mysteries. I really like the way Walter Mosley writes. So that is the end of my reading wrap-up. It's pretty long. I apologize for the length. I don't seem to be able to bring the length of these videos down. I'd really like to, but I don't know how. I'm working on it. So I want to thank you for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.